Hey everyone, hey everyone. It is another Hot Takes episode where we're always seeking to be humble, open, and transparent. I am Lawrence Henderson. I am your discomfort disrupting teddy bear that gets the opportunity to come and host these conversations with amazing practitioners, leaders, and they get to tell you why their thing is a thing. And today is no exception because we have author, coach, speaker, presenter, Sunil. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing amazing and happy to drop some knowledge bombs at the start of the week for everybody. Get them to think about this intangible thing called intuition that
Yeah,
is really responsible for driving success for personal and business.
definitely. And before we dive into the power of intuition, just help people understand where you are in the world, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in London, Ontario, Canada, so just outside of Toronto, and I've been here for a number of years. I grew up in Canada, so yeah, it's pretty good. A little bit chilly, but supposed to get a little bit warm. But yeah, enjoying what I do and from the lovely part of my home.
Well, there's something to as a coach, on first getting introduced to intuition and exercising and all these different things. I'm gonna be honest with you, son. It started off a little spooky. Start off a little spooky for me, but help people understand where this came from as a practice for you.
Absolutely. So intuition itself was something that I absolutely relied on a lot of times. A lot of people have that gut feeling, or they have this sense of knowing, and I didn't really formally know about it until I actually looked at the science. But it was really integral to me moving away from engineering, because I got into it for the wrong reasons. Again, something telling me that I shouldn't have got into. But as a South Asian male, four career doors: doctor, lawyer, engineer, or failure. And I took door number 3, which was engineering, and I hated it. Right. And so what I was really meant to do was be an entrepreneur. And if you look at the first hit that I had when I was with intuition was, now, I mean, with hindsight, it's 2020. When I was 5 years old, there were these video games that I wanted to buy, and my dad said they were too expensive. And I distinctly remember this voice telling me, Sunil, go door to door to raise money. And that's exactly what I did. And I raised $200. This is your 5-year-old kid. $200, lots of milk and cookies. I gave $100 to my dad, and the other $100 I went to charity because that's what my school was doing. And I always had the seed of entrepreneurship in me. But again, the East Indian Kool-Aid took me away from those signals telling me that I should be an entrepreneur. And when I left engineering, I lost my relationship with my dad. But it was responsible for me to have 5 or 6 ventures that totaled about $20 million in revenues, going on to become a management consultant. And as a management consultant, one of the pinnacle things that I used was that gut feeling to know where to take a business. And that gut feeling is based on experience and learning, which a lot of people don't realize. It does take data. It does mean that you still have to put in the processes. So that doesn't change. What helps is that intuition tells me what direction a company should go into. And in one case, I took one company who was struggling at $400,000 a year in revenues. They were on their way down, brought me in to help them out. And the very first thing I did, because they didn't have any trust developed with their employees, and trust is developed in 14 seconds because of intuition. 14 seconds. But what I did is I took the cash flow problem, turned it on its head. I increased everybody's salary as a way of goodwill, because the employees didn't feel like they were treated fairly, or they were even honored or even looked at. And I said, I see you, I hear you. We love you. You are the pinnacle of our success. And by putting a little bit of money in their pocket and involving them in decision making, what ended up happening is taking a $400,000 company that was struggling to $3.5 million in a couple of years. And the beauty of it is when I looked at the expansion and the operations, it was the team that helped, right? So when I won the trust of the employees, they helped with the nitpicky, the grinding, the manuals, where I could concentrate on expansion, which is what I was really meant to do. And they filled in everything underneath. So that expansion was seamless, and everybody loved it. Everybody was helping each other, all based on trust. Right? Intuition. Now, it still meant that we put processes in place. It still meant that we had to have operations manuals. It still meant that we had to have some IT needs and things like that. That doesn't change. But the seed of that expansion is based on this intangible thing called intuition that we're all born with. And that's very, very important to know.
Yeah, and wrapped up in there was a ton of information that you threw in there. But one of the underlying tones I believe that you explicitly described in story form was this trust in that knowing that, and you said those experiences, right? Not discounting them as not having happened, but you now using it as data points and the data in it. We always talk about, we forecast using this data, right? And what is forecasting? Forecasting is you putting into practice and saying we feel like this thing is going to happen as a result of these past things and this information. And so it's amazing that we as people, we don't call it what it is, right? And when you think about using intuition in support of the data that's already been collected, the things that have happened. And I love that you talked about process, because sometimes people try to speed past the process and try to get to the other end of things. But how have you helped people add this as a part of their process and improvement in some cases?
So the big thing is in recognizing that intuition exists. And especially when it comes to the business world, there's this intangible thing that people write about. And if you look at the Jeff Bezos's, Richard Branson's, Sarah Blakely's, Oprah, J.K. Rowling, these are the people that attribute intuition to their decision making, even if it goes against the data. And one of the best examples I can give you is one of the very first interviewees I had was someone who was an investment banker, and he didn't think intuition existed whatsoever. And so, when I went to him to try and get him to understand what intuition really is, he was not having it, because the research at the time before I started looking at the science was talking about things coming from manifestation and spiritual and cosmos, which is fine if people define intuition like that. I look at intuition as signals that people have. And one of the biggest misconceptions that happened was that there's no experience or data behind that. And so when I sat with this fellow, his name is John Rothschild, who was an investment banker. He says, I don't know what we're going to talk about, Sunil. You come down, you're a friend of mine, I'll give you the hour, but intuition doesn't exist. And the camera's clearly on. I said, let's just do this interview and let's see where it goes. And what I wanted to do in this interview is educate him on, there's actually 4 types of intuition that all work together and it speaks to you through things called intuitive signals. And so as I was explaining these things to him about these signals, like people are like, there was a CEO that's run 2 multi-million-year-old businesses, and he sees this omen on his right shoulder come up. When this omen comes up, he says yes to whatever decision is there, whether it's a vendor that he's dealing with, an employee that he's helping, or if he's doing a business deal with a joint venture, he would say yes because of this signal, which is an omen. And so again, 2 multi-billion-dollar businesses, one in the online shopping space, the second one now in bespoke fashion, all because of these signals. So, John's just kind of saying, Sunil, I would like to shake this guy's hand. I just don't think intuition exists. Like, it's based on data and experience and learning. And I said, now this is where the 4 types of intuition come in. One of the first types of intuition is called experiential intuition. So that is based on the data and learning that you've had in the past, ever since you were born. And it shoves it in the subconscious area of your brain where your intuition lives. And so when you're about to make a decision, it goes into this library of information, plucks out the information, the learning, and the experience you've had in the past, both good and bad, to give you a signal to tell you whether that decision is the right one or the wrong one. And in some cases, it has you go against the data. And so this is where John said, well, that's really interesting. I have an example of this. And so now we're going to get into the second one called situational intuition. So John was in the business of doing franchise operations, and they benchmarked a franchise on a scale of 10. So a 9 out of 10 means that you would put a McDonald's or an A&W or Dunkin' Donuts, whatever, because they look at traffic studies, they'd look at demographics and development in the area as examples. There was this one area that was a 5.5 out of 10. And so John went to walk there and he goes, something is telling me in this situation, that's situational intuition, that we should put a franchise here, even though it was a 5.5 out of 10. He goes against the data, and that ends up being one of the most profitable franchise operations out of all of his franchises, called the beer market. And so now John's getting it. He's getting the fact that, it is based on data and experiences. It is based on these things, these hunches that I have. And then at one point, John's purpose changes. He no longer wanted to be an investment banker, and he wanted to actually own a business. Now we're going to get into the third of the four, called relational intuition. What relational intuition does is it filters the people through to only surround yourself with those who are really going to support you. And so all the people, when he made this decision, who were concerned about money, fame, ego, security, high-end restaurants, limousines, private jets, they all told him he was nuts, except for the one person who asked him why. And that was his wife. And his wife asked, "Why are you doing this, John?" And now he starts talking about an intuitive signal. And he says, "You know what? This just feels right." Sometimes you just have to let the data go. You may not have all the information. You have to trust your intuition. So this is now 45 minutes in, from a guy who started my interview saying this thing does not exist, to now fully embracing the knowledge, because he understands now his signals, his experiences, how it worked for him. And that was really important. And then the fourth of the four is creative intuition. And this is the one that tells him to actually make the decision. Now, you would think that John, who's been making $3 to $4 million as an investment banker, would pick a business that has some healthy cash revenues, solid balance sheet, and excellent revenues. Not his intuition. His intuition picks a tiny, bankrupt little restaurant. And so he quits, walks into that tiny, bankrupt little restaurant. That restaurant ended up being Eastside Mario's location number one. And over the next 20 years, he grew that to $2 billion under different franchises because it felt right. And now John understood completely how intuition was the reason why he was able to find success in his career. And so for me, what I do is I take leaders and I take business people to understand what their intuition is and how to use that to tell their story, to earn trust. Because as I was mentioning earlier, trust happens in 14 seconds. So when you have other people trusting you, that means that your story is something they want to engage in. Your actions are matching your words. You're speaking your truth. You're being authentic. You really care. And when you have that side of you, the intuition of others is going to trust you, because intuition is a two-way street. And that's how employees want to work for you. That's why customers want to buy from you again. And that's why the marketplace loves you. And when you have that trifecta because of intuition, that's how you crush your competition. Yeah. 14 seconds.
Yeah. So Sunil, what's coming up for me as I really hear you speak to this, there's something happening in our world today where there's a shift of these extremes. And when you talk about the 14 seconds, it's the fast brain, slow brain things about, am I conscious about the decisions I'm making, or the gut made me act, and different things like that. And what's creeping in is this little thing around bias, particularly when you talk about personal and business decisions, right? And there being very, very huge extremes that we're all navigating these days. Has this practice really exposed those extremes and made you question different things?
Absolutely, because one of the things that you look at when it comes to bias is we often look at the leading versus laggard indicators. And the laggard indicators, when you use bias, are how do people feel around you? Are you treating people? What are the signals that you're getting from them, right? And everybody knows when somebody's looking at you weird, or they don't really respect you, or they're not. And so when you have this inherent bias and the way you treat people, they're going to treat you the same way, and your intuition is able to pick that up. And when it comes to timing, the research shows, it's very clear. The science shows that intuition actually acts on average 7 to 10 seconds before you're actually consciously aware of it. So it's already given you a signal way before you've thought about it. And that's research that's done, I think, about 10 years ago. Research that's coming out of University of Toronto. It hasn't been published yet, so I haven't seen this. But a colleague of mine was saying that that's as early as 23 seconds. And so these are things that are where MRIs are done, brain scans are done. And so these signals are done so you already know if you've got a bias, you can see how people are treating you. You can see how people want to be around you, if they do or if they don't. And those are laggard indicators, which means that what you haven't done is you haven't treated people properly. You're using a bias to, and there's filters. So you have two ways you can do. You can change your bias and be more authentic and be more real. And then people want to work with you. People want to be around you. People want to be your friend. And you find the quality of people increase, not the quantity. And it's not about the numbers. It's about who you want to surround yourself with in your personal life and your business. I've met tens of thousands of people, probably over 100,000 now with me speaking. I have three people. And of those three, two of them are on my inner circle. That's all. That's all I need apart from my family, because those are the wholesome people that make me just live my life, love my life on the personal side and love my life on the business side. And I can't imagine how you can't go about life waking up every single day loving what you're doing. And that's by me taking care of, if I had any biases, I need to get rid of them. I need to take the education to get rid of them. Why do I have those biases? How do I change that? And maybe it's immersing yourself in the group with those biases, talking to those people, taking them out for a coffee or beer, establishing a genuine relationship. So we get out the biases that in most cases comes from some concept to the reality of you're talking to a person here. And that's that connection. And that's where intuition is a two-way street. And that's how you get rid of those biases. And what you'll find is that when those people want to work for you, those biases get shed really quickly. When people want to add quality to your life in your personal life, and they're there for you during the ups and the downs, those biases are gone, because now you're trusting that person and you're celebrating that person and not who you think that person represents from your bias.
Yeah, and I love that, particularly from the framework that you were talking about, the business investor, where it was really went into those investments, went against conventional wisdom, right? And again, both when we stay in our bubbles and we use confirmation as a bias, as a daily practice, you basically ingrain yourself and give yourself the reps and data points to prove yourself right. And I really believe that that's where the extremes are coming from today, is because we're not giving ourselves anything else to contradict or combat what was normal for us in our daily lives. And I really believe it's the leaders who lean into, you know what, those data points gave me something, but it's the old school Stephen Covey thing. I'm assuming the best until proved, but you have that every single moment, and say, you know what, I'm gonna lean into it. And I think when you think about how you ended up at this point, I want to go to the process part of it. Like you said, there's a 7-step process to help solve how to use intuition. And so get into a couple of those steps. I don't want you to give the whole kitchen sink away, but get into a couple of those steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And so everything is based on your past. And so the big thing is to figure out what are your intuitive signals. And the intuitive signals are very unique. As much earlier as I had some a CEO tell me about omens, I've had other CEOs that have told me that their left earlobe gets hot. Some people get a voice, they get a gut feeling. And the problem is sometimes we use these as generalities. Oh yeah, I get that gut feeling. But the way that intuitive signals work is that they always send you a signal that's very subtle in nature. And those are the ones that we miss. So let's say you and I have this, we both share this gut feeling, which is one of the signals. And for you, you've done your homework, and that gut feeling is signal number 1. If I make that suggestion, that is signal number 1 for me, but it's actually signal number 3, I've missed my first 2 signals because I haven't done my homework. I haven't looked to the past to see, when did these intuitive signals hit me when I made a decision? And so that means I made 2 bad decisions. That could be me stubbing my toe, or I'm headed towards bankruptcy. I don't know. So one of the biggest things you do is you look back to, when did you make the right decisions? When did you make the wrong decisions? And what did they feel like? And was that the first right decision, or the first wrong decision, or was there an earlier one? And you want to trace back to the origin of that, right? Because a voice could be great, and it led you to the wrong decision, but was that the first wrong decision, or was there a chain of events? And the more times you spend writing this down on a piece of paper, and what you're feeling is, that's when you have your inventory of positive and negative signals. And that's important, because in this 7-step process, when you have your inventory of positive and negative signals, the next decision you make is going to have a signal attached to it. And so you'll know very quickly if that's a positive intuitive signal. That means take that decision. Remember, it happens 7 to 10 seconds before you take that decision. And if it's a negative signal, it's warning you to say something in your past you've done, saying, Sunil, don't make that decision because you've done something like that similar, or somebody else has done that similar that you've recognized, and it didn't turn out well. So that negative signal is telling you to walk away. And so the first few steps are really getting you to understand what your positive and negative signals are and who's attached to that. Because 2/3 of the research that I found at intuition is who you surround yourself with. Who did you listen to? Who gave you that advice? And you also have to now think about, how do I get rid of those people that are giving me the wrong information to keep with the right information? And so that's what who gave you that decision? Who helped you make that bad decision? Those are the relationships you want to move away from, so that you can move towards those who are going to help you and support you and help you trust yourself to make those decisions. Because ultimately there was a decision that you had, somebody got you to move away from that decision. And so then you made the wrong decision, and now you're going down the wrong path. And so finding out what your inventory signals are, surrounding yourself with the right people, that's how you trust your intuition to make the right decision each and every time.
Yeah, and you could tell you've been digging into this stuff, because as a former HR leader, one of the things I always used to say, if it's not written, it's not real. And just to capture what your life has been telling you and the things that you've experienced, have you captured those things? And what you described is literally something a mentor coach of mine was like, this is how you take just normal coaching to like 10x coaching, is just the noticing and the like you said, the process of what you feel, what you think, positive, negative, like capturing it all, not just what went well, but it's all usable data points. And when you think about when people don't capture these things, again, I know it's self-explanatory of what potentially could happen, but in your experience, what are the indicators that you see in people that they haven't listened in the past?
Yeah, so they're pretty easy. One is there's a sense of ego. I know more than you. This just doesn't exist. Even though they're getting those intuitive signals, and even though they're probably using it in their personal life, they think that I'm the boss. I have this thing. It's about me. That's one. The second thing is, again, not recognizing that they actually how it really works. And again, this is all based on science. And there's like over 20,000 articles with intuition and business or entrepreneurship alone, 20,000 articles on how important intuition is when it comes to business decisions. And so we actually have these things. And what I'm doing is I'm putting the science to it to show you how it actually works. So in some cases, they don't recognize how it works, but they have to define it just like John Rothschild in their own way. How did it act? What's their signals? And once they're familiar with that, then they can move on. And the other one is some of them are just too wrapped in the data. They're too wrapped in having a 20-year career doing something the same way, that when you try and give them something that's a different way, they don't agree with it because it's uncomfortable for them to move from where the old way of doing things is. And again, if you want to look at the Lagrange indicator, people leave. You lose $2 million. I've had a client with that sense of ego, lost $2 million in a strategy that he shouldn't have done, which I told him he shouldn't have. And again, my intuition said he didn't have the skill set. He didn't have the wherewithal. He didn't have customers returning. He didn't have the sales staff that needed to move in that other area. Based on intuition, the data matched it later. 3 months later, I'm telling his board, he went in anyways because of ego. $2 million gone after I met him a couple of years later. So these are some of the things that that people have to get into, that have to get rid of sometimes, and then also recognize that this thing is really a tangible thing once you actually talk about it. And time again, I've got people coming up on my podcast series that talks about the success that they've had, or the intuitive moment that they have, or what I call a wake up call moment, where they hit rock bottom, or their business fails, or they know their business is going down south pretty quickly, when they start trusting their intuition. And then they recognize the power of it when they start to see the success by trusting these things called intuitive signals. And unfortunately, people sometimes need to have that bounce. And I'm trying to make sure that these business people don't have that bounce, that they're able actually to start accelerating the success now. And I mean, my resume is filled with companies, Fortune 500 companies as well, that I've been able to bring this thing to them, and they've excelled. They've been able to crush their competition, and they're much happier. Right? I've had CEOs who are actually able to not stop working 7 days a week to now work 5 days a week and have 2 days of a hobby, going from losing 4 out of 6 in 4 out of 6 areas to winning in 5 out of 6. Then the sixth one he wanted to have because that's his love. Okay, that's fine. You have a loss there, but his whole business shifted, and he's enjoying his life. So there's the tangible, which is the business one, because now he's earning, in his case, $2 million more a year, and he's got 2 days for him and his family. That's the intangible stuff. And that's what happens when you trust your intuition, these signals, to implement that in your business, because things become really, really well financially, if you want the data, and you personally, if you just really want to feel good. And I mean, there's no better way to run a business, in my opinion.
Yeah. And what you really spoke to there, right? It's not the get rich quick scheme. It's what you're talking about is creating life habits, behaviors that support a whole person, but using the things that can be innate once you build the muscle to really trust. Not only people trust you, but you begin to trust yourself through your experiences and all the rest of those things. And that insinuates you actually have to live this life, not let life happen to you. Yeah, I love that. Go ahead.
Yeah. And a lot of people think it's hard. And hard just means that they're so embedded in the old way of doing things that they find it hard. They define hard as extricating themselves. But again, this is something you're born with. This is something you already have as intuitive signals. This is already, as you say, innate in you. All you're doing is saying, I'm not going to operate like that anymore. I'm going to go back to the basics with my intuitive signals, my sense. I've already got experience. I know people who I'm going to surround myself with who are going to help me move my life in business and personal ahead. And I'm going to just start fresh with these intuitive signals. There's nothing hard about that. Yeah. And we define hard because we seem to think that we got to chunk things away. No, that's you're thinking it's hard.
Yep.
It has nothing to do. You can start tomorrow. But the reality is many people don't take action. You know, there's a statistic that I often use that in a room full of 25,000 people, these are stats gathered by Harvard and Gallup and all that. In a room full of 25,000 people, with them putting their hand up saying, I'm going to change, the number of people that actually change is one out of 25,000. So for those looking and listening and watching, and you got to change, you got to take action. Because nothing happens without taking the first steps. And don't forget, you're being guided by your intuition. That is the source for your success. So why not follow that path? I just don't understand why people don't do that.
Yeah. And to your point, right? It's one of those. Action is the reason why it's data collection, right? And if you don't give yourself another data point to evaluate, then how can you expect to change and to shift into different things? And so people already know from my TEDx, actions over ideas always win. Like that is my thing. That is my life mantra and something that I lean into. But like you said, it's in all aspects of your life, right? It's financial, it's family, it's emotional, it's all those things that you make a decision holistically on. And again, it could start in a compartment, but just ensuring that you honor yourself to make sure that it's turning into a lifestyle for you. And so Sunil, I want everybody to reach out to you, connect with you, and get some of what you got, because I know you got a book out there, and I'm gonna share your details. They had them scrolling across, but how can people connect with you further?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of ways. On the personal side, there's intuitionology.com. And so that takes you through learning about the 7-day challenges there. The 7-day challenge is free. And in that case, what you do is you pick a problem and you learn about the components of your intuition, your signals, to really solve them, to really surround yourself with the right people to solve that particular problem. And so you learn how to use your intuition to filter your relationships. And then if you want to take it further, there's courses that you can do. So the 7-day challenge is free, by the way. And I give you a PDF template that's fillable that you can take for any problem you have. on an ongoing basis. I give you a free copy of my gut ebook within the 7-day challenge. So that's even free as a resource. And then if you want to learn about more on the business side with intuitive branding, you can go to sunilgodse.com. And there's a way to get in contact. And there's various ways that I can help your business with some of the testimonials that are there. And pretty soon I'll be doing a joint venture with a membership with someone from the UK who's with the UK Coach of the Year in 2019, 2020. So we're just in the formation stages of that. And there's my podcast series on intuition called the Intuitionology Podcast Series. A new podcast series called Intuitive Branding coming up with my first guest being Brendan Kane, who gained 1 million followers in 30 days. The photographer for Usher, personal photographer for Usher. So I've got these kind of guests coming up saying, I absolutely want to talk to you, Sunil, because intuition was a key success for them to get to where they are, and having some great conversations there. So lots of ways, of course, all the social medias, lots of content. I'm spending a lot more content now on me talking about ways that you can trust your intuition or sharpen it, or, a lot of tactics and stuff like that. So lots of ways you can get in touch with me.
I love it. I love it. So as you heard, there are plenty of ways that you can consume content from Sunil, and make sure you get connected. Make sure you stay plugged in and avail yourself to the opportunities on his website and all those different things. Well, Sunil, I want to thank you so much just for coming to hang out for a little bit with me. And you are, again, like all the rest of my guests, I love that you're a practitioner and you've gotten dirty in this work yourself. So I know this isn't just a check the box for you. So thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Well, folks, you already know. This was another humble, open, and transparent conversations. And if you're a speaker, if you're a practitioner, if you're somebody who loves to get dirty yourself and your work boots are actually used and your coveralls actually have a little mud on them, I would love to have a conversation with you as well, just to share what you're doing for the world around you. Direct message me and we'll go from there. So until next time, folks, be well, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.